Hey, Facebook family and friends. Hope everyone is staying safe and hope everyone is well. For those of you who know me personally, you know I'm a DIYer. I'm always making something, creating something, building something, remodeling something. Honestly, I have more power tools than I have shoes. And I plan on launching soon a site, Black Girls DIY too. But the purpose of this video is I wanted to share with you what I worked on this weekend. Um, First and foremost, though, I know that the coronavirus is on everyone's minds. And if you're like me, you know, the one who goes out and does the essential shopping, you want to be safe while you're doing it. So I've been in the house now going on 5 weeks, and there's times when I've had to go out to do that shopping. I feel like I'm in a scene from Hunger Games. So I first went out in my garage. I had an old mask that I had used for projects and started using that mask for the few times that I've had to go out. But, you know, it's gotten dirty. There's no way that I can clean it. And finally this weekend I said, you know what, I need to make my own mask because the ones I ordered are going to take forever to get here. So I went online, I'm sure like most of you have, and seen tons and tons and tons of videos on how to make masks. Well, I happened to run upon this one YouTuber. Her web page is Pretty Handy Girl. And I immediately connected with her because she's a DIYer, does her own construction. And so she had made several different masks, but they just weren't fitting her right. And so she finally came up with a pattern for a mask. And I really, really liked what she was talking about and what she did. So I created a couple of those masks this weekend, made a couple modifications for myself. And so I just want to share that with you guys. If it inspires you to sew your own mask, I had to pull out my sewing machine out of our craft room. I hadn't used that in a couple of years probably. You know, hot glue one, whatever, and maybe add a few of the modifications that I've made to try to hopefully make it safer. If that inspires you and helps you stay safe, then, you know, I'm happy to share this video. If you have any questions, let me know. If you need any help, let me know. But so here we go, and I'm going to show you this video, and I hope you like it. So I went into our craft room, and I found some old swatches of fabric laying around, different colors that I'm going to use, and also this really heavy cotton material that I'm going to use for the lining. So I used chalk to outline the pattern. You can use a pen if you want to, but I thought chalk worked very well. And so here's the pattern all outlined for me and ready for me to cut. So I actually goofed and I traced the pattern on the right side of the material when I should have flipped it to the wrong side because I need to trace out these edges that are going to be sewn and then trimmed. So next I did what Pretty Handy Girl said. I took the pattern for the lining and traced out two, one for the lining and one for the filter pouch, and then I'm gonna cut these out. So I sewed and trimmed the pieces, then I turned the outer cover right side out. For the other two pieces you don't have to turn them inside out. Then I lined up the patterns to make sure I knew where the nose and where the chin were located. So I put the liner inside the cover, and then I ironed down all the edges to the filter cover and also the outer cover with the lining, and now I'm ready to sew. After sewing the edges of the filter cover, I sat it inside of the mask, lining it with the lining and then ironing back over the edges again to include the filter cover to make sure that it's all ready to go for me to sew. So before I sew, I need to enter the nose piece. I used the full tie from the coffee bag because I wanted to make sure that I had full coverage across my nose. So I used these clips to hold down the nose piece because I really didn't want any unnecessary pinholes or needle holes holding it down right before I sewed it all together from the top. So the elastic for the ear tie part, I actually used these hair ties that Faith actually uses for her hair. And the way I found to get it through the bead is I use a piece of string to pull that through the bead and just make sure that you have the glued end of the tie down at the bottom. So now it's time to add the ear holes, and just make sure that you have that glued part of the hair tie in the middle so that you can put it straight in the back of the material. And then we're going to fold that over, and we're going to sew that down, straight down, and seal it. So here are the two masks that I made, and this one is mine, and this one is my dad's, and I put ribbons on the end of it so that we also can pull it up and tie it behind our heads so we won't have so much ear fatigue. Hey everybody, this is the one that I did for my dad. Turn your head so they can see the sides. Got them all. So, you know, him and I both got big ears, so we gotta do a little something to make sure our ears don't get fatigued. Say hi, Daddy.
Hi, Daddy.
So then I started thinking about the filter situation, and actually ran across another YouTuber who actually was using Hepa filters from a vacuum. And I was thinking, why not use the type of filter that you put in your furnace? I mean, it blows air through your house. It's got to be safe. And I mean, this one, I bought the most expensive one. It's supposed to keep back coughs and viruses and all kinds of fumes in the air. So I'm like, hey, why not? Let me try this and take it apart and make some pieces with this and see how it works. It can't hurt. This one even has a way that you can digitally check it out, but let's go and take it apart. So just be really careful if you do decide to do this, because this metal was no joke. Me trying to get through this and making sure I didn't cut the filter or cut myself. So at this point I've taken it all apart, but there are these pieces on the end, so I'm just going to cut down the sides and make sure there's no holes in the filter. Now I'm just using the filter pattern just to maximize this piece of furnace filter so that I can get as many pieces out of it as I can. So I cut out a pattern, and I definitely don't want any holes in this filter. So I use my hot glue gun to do the edges instead of sewing it like I did the filter liners before. And just make sure that you have the airflow in the right direction so that it's facing with the airflow going out on the outside. Now that I have the filter created, I laid it inside of the mask to kind of retrofit it, make sure that it's fitting right. And obviously it's too big because this is the size of the liner and whatnot. So I'm going to have to trim this down. So now this is with it trimmed down, and I think it's really going to fit well into the mask. So I'm going to give it a try and see if I can get it in there. So from here, I'm going to fold it and kind of crease it up and stick it in the sides, and hopefully I can get this filter in there. So I got the filter in there. It took a little wiggling and maneuvering to get it in there, but I have both pieces pulled through on both ends and flattened out. Again, it took a little wiggling to get it in there, but hey, it worked. I got it in there, and it's flat and it's ready to go. You know, I was thinking last night, this is kind of a hard way to get this filter in this mask. And Pretty Handy Girl actually had two patterns, one for a large mask and for a medium mask. And I thought, maybe I can figure out a way to slide that filter in a better way. So I started creating a new mask utilizing the larger template, and this time when I ironed, I also used some starch, and it really helped to lay those edges down a lot better. So this time, instead of sewing the sides of the filter cover, I decided to sew the bottom so that I can slip the filter in through the bottom. And so I folded over and ironed the bottom of the filter cover. I've already put in the liner for the mask is already in there, and I folded over these edges, and so I'm gonna sew those edges just like I sewed the side edges for the filter cover for the original mask. So I'm going to go about this one a little bit differently. Since I sewed the bottom of the filter liner, I'm going to sew the bottom of the mask first and make sure that it all lines up. And I'm not going to sew those two pieces together like in the original mask. So I have to admit at this point, since I'm, creating this myself, I definitely wanted to try to get the filter cover to line up as best it could to the bottom of the mask. And so it took a little maneuvering around and pulling or whatever. And so, I got it kind of lined up where I wanted it for the bottom of the mask, and then tucked it in underneath the top of the mask and re-ironed the top so I can sew the top part of the mask. So just like the other mask, I put in the nose piece and sewed it into place. So I put on the ear bands, and I have to say this came out really well. I really like the pouch. So I put a paper towel in between me and the mask because I'm going to be giving this to my mom, and one, I have makeup on. Two, I don't want to blow my germs on, her mask necessarily. So I'll put the ribbons on a little bit later. Now this again is the larger template, and though I think I think it fits well, it will fit well. I don't have this as tight because it's not for me, number one, and it's for my mom, but I think this is going to be great. Being able to, pull it nice and tight, and once I add the ribbons to it, if she wants to do that. But definitely that pocket is going to be awesome to get the filter in a lot easier. I flipped this inside out, and that's where, you're going to be able to lay your filter in nice and flat, not having to finagle around or whatever, and then flip it back, everything, and put it back on, and I think it's gonna look great. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and keep an eye out for the launch of Black Girls Can DIY Too.